The vast emptiness of space stretched before the Earth reconnaissance vessel Pathfinder as it cruised along the edge of human-controlled territory. Captain Frank Miller sat in his command chair, his eyes fixed on the main view screen that displayed the star-speckled void ahead. At 42, Miller was considered young for a captain, but his record spoke for itself. 15 years of exemplary service, with the last 5 spent commanding scout vessels like the Pathfinder. Captain, I'm picking up unusual energy readings. At coordinates 227 Mark 43, said Navigation Officer Lisa Woods, her fingers dancing across her console. The blonde woman had served with Miller for 3 years, and he had come to trust her instincts implicitly. Can you identify the source? Miller asked, leaning forward in his chair. Lisa shook her head. Not yet, sir. Whatever it is, it's unlike anything in our database. Miller nodded and turned to his communications specialist. Greg, any transmissions from that sector? Greg Thompson, a thin man with sharp features and quick hands, adjusted his earpiece. Nothing clear, sir, but there's definitely something there. A sort of background noise that doesn't match known cosmic radiation patterns. Put us on yellow alert, Miller ordered. Olivia, full sensor sweep of that area. Science Officer Olivia Patel, seated at the science station, immediately began the scan. Her dark eyes narrowed as data streamed across her screen. Captain, you need to see this, she said, her voice tight with tension. Miller moved to her station, peering over her shoulder at the readings. What he saw made his blood run cold. The energy signatures suggested not one ship, but dozens, possibly hundreds. How far? He asked quietly. At current speed, we'll be within visual range in 17 minutes, Olivia replied. Miller straightened and addressed his security chief. Alan, status of our defensive systems? Alan Martinez, a broad-shouldered man with a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow, reported from his station. Shields at full capacity, weapon systems charged and ready. But sir, if these readings are accurate, we're severely outgunned. Let's hope it doesn't come to that, Miller replied. He turned to his final crew member. Sam, how's our engine status? Engineer Sam Porter looked up from his engineering console. All systems optimal, Captain. If we need to run, we can push to 110% for about 3 hours before risking core instability. Miller nodded, appreciating the straightforward report. That was Sam. Practical, no nonsense, and always prepared for the worst. The 6 of them made an efficient team, handpicked for their ability to think on their feet and operate far from support. Let's slow our approach, Miller decided. Standard observation protocols. If these are unknowns, I want us to get as much information as possible before making contact. The Pathfinder reduced speed, moving cautiously toward the mysterious energy readings. As they drew closer, the view screen began to resolve the shapes in the distance. First one, then dozens, then hundreds of vessels came into view. My God, breathed Greg from his communication station. The alien fleet was vast, comprising ships of various sizes, from small fighter-like vessels to enormous capital ships that dwarfed the largest Earth battle cruisers. Their designs were unlike anything in human records, sleek reptilian shapes with blade-like protrusions and glowing energy conduits running along their hulls. Full scan, Olivia. I want to know everything about those ships, Miller ordered, his voice calm despite the hammering of his heart. Already on it, Captain. Their technology is advanced. Energy readings suggest weapons capabilities far beyond our own. Olivia's fingers flew over her console. Hull composition unknown, but it appears to be some kind of metallic-organic hybrid. And sir, I'm detecting life signs. Thousands of them, possibly tens of thousands. Miller nodded grimly. Greg, passive, communications only. Let's see if they're talking to each other before we announce ourselves. Sir, Lisa interrupted. They're changing formation. I think they've spotted us. Miller returned to his command chair. Maintain position. Let's not appear threatening. Captain, Greg called out. We're being hailed. Miller took a deep breath. On screen. The view screen flickered, and the image of the alien fleet was replaced by a close-up of what appeared to be the bridge of one of the larger vessels. In the center stood a towering reptilian being, at least 7 feet tall, with scaled skin in mottled green and gray patterns. Its eyes were amber with vertical pupils and elaborate armor covered its broad frame. "I am Supreme General Zextal of the Kravor Collective," the alien announced, its voice deep and resonant despite speaking through a translation system. "You have entered Kravor claimed space. Identify yourselves and state your purpose." Miller stood, maintaining a composed expression. "I am Captain Frank Miller of the Earth reconnaissance vessel Pathfinder. We are on a peaceful mission of exploration. We were unaware this sector had been claimed by any civilization." The alien's eyes narrowed, vertical pupils contracting to thin slits. "Earth, we have heard of your kind. Newly emerged from your home system, are you not? We have been exploring beyond our solar system for approximately 70 years, Miller confirmed, carefully gauging the alien's reactions. "And you send military vessels as explorers?" Zextal's tone was skeptical, almost mocking. "The Pathfinder is primarily a research and reconnaissance vessel," Miller explained truthfully. "We maintain minimal defensive capabilities for our own protection." While maintaining the conversation, Miller subtly signaled to Allen, who understood immediately. The security chief's fingers moved across his console, quietly activating the ship's emergency beacon. A tight beam transmission directed toward Earth Command that would alert them to the potential threat. "A scout ship, then," Zextal said, the alien equivalent of a smile spreading across his reptilian features. "Where there are scouts, a fleet must follow. Is that not so, Captain Miller?" Miller kept his expression neutral. "We operate independently, on our mission parameters." The alien commander seemed to study Miller for a long moment. "You show remarkable composure for one facing the might of the Kravor Collective. 12 star systems have surrendered to us without resistance upon witnessing our armada." "We mean no disrespect, Supreme General," Miller replied diplomatically. "Humanity is interested in peaceful relations with all species we encounter." Zextal made a sound that might have been laughter. "Peace is certainly an option, Captain, through submission. Your vessel is impressive for its size, but you are clearly outmatched. I offer you the opportunity to surrender now and become the first human representative of the Kravor Collective." As the conversation continued, Miller noticed his crew working quietly at their stations. Olivia was rapidly gathering data on the alien fleet. Sam was making subtle adjustments to their shield configurations, and Lisa was plotting potential escape routes. Greg was not only maintaining the translation link-up, but also attempting to intercept other communications from the alien fleet. "I appreciate your offer, Supreme General," Miller said carefully, "but I lack the authority to make such decisions on behalf of Earth. Perhaps we could arrange a formal diplomatic meeting between our respective governments?" The alien's expression hardened. "You misunderstand, Captain. This is not a negotiation between equals. The Kravor Collective does not arrange meetings. We conquer. We rule. Those who accept this truth prosper under our protection. Those who resist are eliminated." Miller maintained his diplomatic composure, but his mind was racing. The Pathfinder was fast, but there was no way they could outrun an entire fleet. Their only hope was to keep the aliens talking long enough for Earth Command to receive their distress signal and respond. "I understand your position, Supreme General," Miller said. "However, I believe there is much our civilizations could learn from each other through peaceful exchange. The elimination of potential allies seems inefficient." Zextal tilted his head, clearly intrigued by Miller's response. In the background of the alien bridge, Miller could see other Kravor officers exchanging glances. They had expected fear, perhaps desperate pleas or futile threats, not this calm, reasoned approach. "Are either very brave or very foolish, Captain Miller," Zextal said at last. "Perhaps there is more to humans than our intelligence suggested. I will allow you 12 of your Earth hours to communicate with your superiors. Then you will provide us with navigational data to your home planet, or we will extract it from your ship's computers after we destroy you." The communication cut off, leaving the Pathfinder's bridge in tense silence. 12 hours, Miller said quietly. "Let's make them count." The moment the communication with Supreme General Zextal ended, The crew of the Pathfinder sprang into action. Captain Miller looked at each of his 5 crew members, his expression serious but determined. "Status report," he ordered. "Emergency. Beacon is active and transmitting," Security Chief Alan Martinez confirmed. "If Earth Command receives our signal, help could arrive in 3 to 4 days. 3 to 4 days, Miller repeated quietly. "And we have 12 hours. Lisa Woods shook her head at her navigation console. "Even at maximum speed, we couldn't outrun their ships. They've positioned themselves to cut off our escape routes." "Then we don't run," Miller decided. "We stand our ground and buy time." Engineer Sam Porter stood up from his station. "Captain, I might have something that could help. Those shield modifications I've been working on, they're not fully tested, but they could make us appear more formidable than we actually are." Miller nodded. "Explain." "I can reconfigure our shield harmonics to create a resonance effect," Sam said, his eyes bright with the challenge. "From the outside, it would make our shields look much stronger than they actually are. The downside is it'll drain our power reserves faster." "How much faster?" Miller asked. "We could maintain it for about 16 hours before critical power loss. That's 4 hours more than we need." "Do it," Miller ordered. As Sam hurried off to engineering, Miller turned to his science officer. "Olivia, what have you learned about their ships?" Olivia Patel was hunched over her console, analyzing the data she had gathered during their encounter. "Their technology is impressive, but not without weaknesses. Their ships generate an enormous amount of energy, but their heat dispersion systems are inefficient. And there's something interesting about their propulsion system." She pulled up a schematic on the main view screen. "See these nodes along their hull? They're part of their faster-than-light drive. If targeted precisely, a disruption could temporarily disable their ability to pursue us." "Good work," Miller said. "Alan, work with Olivia to identify targeting solutions for those nodes." Miller then moved to where Greg Thompson was working, at communications. "Any luck intercepting their internal communications?" Greg nodded, not looking up from his console. "Their encryption is complex, but I've managed to break through some of it. They're transmitting a lot of messages between ships, more than seems necessary for standard operations." "What are they saying?" Miller asked. "I've only decoded fragments, but—" Greg looked up, surprise evident on his face. "I think they're nervous, Captain. There are repeated references to human capabilities and conflicting reports about our history. Some of their commanders seem to be arguing about how to proceed." Miller raised an eyebrow. "They're nervous? About us?" "It seems they've encountered other species before, but usually their intimidation tactics work immediately. Our calm response has them confused." A slow smile spread across Miller's face. "So they're not used to resistance." He thought for a moment. "Greg, can you isolate their command frequencies?" "Already done, sir." "Good. Keep monitoring. I want to know the moment their tone changes." Over the next few hours, the crew worked tirelessly. Sam returned from engineering, his hands dirty but his face triumphant. "Shield modifications are complete, Captain. To any external sensors, we'll register as having defensive capabilities comparable to a vessel 3 times our size." "Excellent work," Miller praised. Suddenly an alarm sounded from Lisa's station. "Captain, 3 alien vessels are moving toward us. Small ones, probably fighters or scout ships." "They're testing us," Miller said. On screen, the view screen showed 3 sleek, predatory-looking craft approaching the Pathfinder. They moved with precision, spreading out to surround the human vessel. "They're scanning us," Olivia reported, "getting clear readings on our modified shields." "Sir, they're opening weapons ports," Alan warned. Miller remained calm. "Lisa, evasive pattern Delta. Let's show them what we can do." What followed astonished even the crew. Lisa Woods was no ordinary pilot. She had graduated top of her class at the academy and held the record for the advanced maneuvering course. The Pathfinder, while small, was built for agility and speed. In Lisa's hands, it became something else, entirely. A dancing phantom that seemed to anticipate the alien fighters' moves before they made them. The alien vessels fired, energy beams cutting through space where the Pathfinder had been milliseconds before. Lisa rolled the ship, executing a tight spiral that no vessel their size should have been capable of performing. "They're firing again," Alan reported, his voice steady despite the tension. "Maintain evasive maneuvers," Miller ordered. "No return. Fire unless absolutely necessary." Lisa nodded, her fingers flying over the controls. The Pathfinder dipped, spun, and accelerated in patterns that seemed random, but were precisely calculated to confuse their attackers. After several minutes of failed attempts to hit the human vessel, the 3 alien fighters pulled back. "They're retreating to their main fleet," Olivia confirmed. "Greg, are you still monitoring their communications?" Miller asked. Greg nodded, his expression one of disbelief. "Sir, you need to hear this." He tapped a few controls, and a translated voice came through the speakers. "Impossible maneuverability. Their navigation systems must be far more advanced than our intelligence suggested. Do not engage further without direct orders from Supreme General Zexital." Miller couldn't help but smile. They think our technology is superior, when it's really just Lisa's flying. Lisa blushed slightly at the compliment but kept her focus on her console. "Captain," Olivia called out, "I'm detecting increased activity in the alien fleet. Multiple ships are repositioning." The main view screen showed the massive alien armada shifting formation. The largest vessels were moving to the center, with smaller craft forming protective rings around them. "They're adopting a defensive posture," Alan noted with surprise. "They're actually concerned about us." "Sir," Greg interrupted. "Incoming transmission from the Kravor command ship. On screen," Miller ordered, quickly composing his features into a mask of calm confidence. Supreme General Zexital appeared once more, but his demeanor had subtly changed. There was a new wariness in those alien eyes. "Your vessel's capabilities are unexpected, Captain Miller," the alien commander said. "Perhaps we should extend our discussion period. I am willing to allow you 24 of your Earth hours instead of 12 to consult with your superiors." Miller maintained his diplomatic expression. "That's very generous, Supreme General. We appreciate the additional time." After the communication ended, the bridge was silent for a moment before Sam spoke up. "Did they just back down?" "Not yet," Miller replied, "but they're reconsidering their approach. They came expecting easy prey and found something they don't understand." He looked around at his crew. "And we're going to build on that confusion." He stood in the center of the bridge, his mind racing with possibilities. "Here's what we're going to do. Sam, continue enhancing our shields. Make them think we're even stronger than we appear now. Olivia, I want detailed analysis of their fleet formation. Identify any gaps or weaknesses. Greg, keep monitoring their communications and see if you can plant some false signals for them to intercept. Lisa, calculate multiple escape routes just in case. And Alan, prepare a series of unmanned probes. We're going to modify them to look like they're conducting military reconnaissance." The crew looked at him with a mixture of surprise and growing excitement. "They think we're more powerful than we are," Miller explained. "Let's not disappoint them. If we can't fight our way out, we'll think our way out." As his crew set to work, with renewed purpose, Miller returned to his command chair. He knew they were still in grave danger, one small scout ship facing an alien armada. But for the first time since the encounter began, he felt a flicker of hope. The Kravor had conquered 12 star systems through fear and intimidation alone. They weren't prepared for an enemy who refused to be intimidated. And they certainly weren't prepared for the ingenuity of a human crew with their backs against the wall. The misunderstanding that had begun with their first interaction was about to become the Pathfinder's greatest weapon. 8 hours into their extended deadline, Captain Frank Miller gathered his crew in the small conference room adjacent to the bridge. The room, designed for mission briefings, felt cramped with all 6 of them present, but Miller preferred to discuss their next steps face-to-face rather than from their stations. "Time for an update," Miller said, looking at each of his crew members. "Sam, how are our enhanced shields holding up?" Engineer Sam Porter nodded confidently. "Better than expected, Captain. I've managed to create a feedback loop in the shield, Harmonics that makes our energy signature fluctuate. To their sensors, it looks like we're running much more powerful systems than we actually are. Good. Olivia? Science Officer Olivia Patel brought up a holographic display of the alien fleet. I've completed my analysis of their vessels. Their main weakness is here. She pointed to specific areas on the alien ships. These heat dispersion vents are critical to their operation. If targeted with even our limited weapons, we could potentially disable several of their ships temporarily. Let's hope it doesn't come to that, Miller replied. Alan? Security Chief Alan Martinez activated his own display. I've reprogrammed our defensive drones as you requested. Instead of standard patrol patterns, they're now moving in formation patterns that suggest they're scouts for larger combat units. I've also increased their energy signatures to make them appear more threatening. Greg, what about communications? Communications specialist Greg Thompson looked tired but satisfied. I've successfully reconfigured our communication arrays to generate ghost signals. To anyone listening, it sounds like we're coordinating with nearby human vessels. I've also been continuing to monitor their internal communications. And? Miller prompted. Greg smiled slightly. They're definitely getting nervous. There's been a marked increase in message traffic between their ships, and the tone has changed from confident to concerned. They keep referring to human deception tactics and unknown fleet capabilities. Miller nodded, pleased with the progress. Lisa? Navigation Officer Lisa Woods activated the main display. I've identified our best escape route if needed. There's an asteroid field at these coordinates. She pointed to an area of space not far from their position. The field has unusual mineral properties that would make tracking difficult. The Pathfinder could navigate through it, but their larger vessels would have to go around, buying us valuable time. Excellent work, all of you, Miller said. Now here's the plan. We're going to push this bluff as far as we can. Our goal is to convince the Cravor that we're not just a scout ship, but part of a larger operation. Miller walked to the display and brought up an image of a nearby nebula. This nebula is approximately 2 light hours from our position. Its composition makes it difficult to scan through effectively. Greg, I want you to modify our communication signals to make it appear we're coordinating with a fleet hiding in this nebula. Greg nodded. I can do that. I'll create communication patterns consistent with fleet movements. Olivia, can you use our sensors to create false readings that would suggest ship movements within the nebula? Olivia thought for a moment. I can recalibrate our sensor array to emit specific radiation patterns. If the Cravor detect these, they might interpret them as engine signatures. Good. Sam, I need you to make some modifications to our probe launch system. Can you make our probes emit energy signatures similar to human military vessels? Sam rubbed his chin. It would mean sacrificing most of our research equipment, but yes, I could reconfigure them to broadcast false identification signals. Do it, Miller ordered. Alan, work with Sam on the probes. I want them to move in patterns that suggest they're scouts for larger combat units. As the crew left to implement Miller's plan, he called to Lisa. A word, please. When they were, alone, Miller spoke quietly. I need you to plot a course directly toward the Cravor fleet. Lisa's eyes widened. Sir? Not to attack, Miller clarified, but close enough to make them nervous. If we're going to sell this bluff, we need to act like we're not afraid of them. Lisa nodded slowly. I understand, Captain, but it's risky. Everything about this situation is risky, Miller replied with a grim smile. But I'd rather take calculated risks than wait passively for them to decide our fate. 3 hours later, the Pathfinder began moving slowly toward the Cravor fleet. As expected, the alien vessels shifted in response, several smaller ships moving to intercept. They're scanning us again, Olivia reported from her station. Getting clear readings on our modified shields and energy signature. Launch the first set of probes, Miller ordered. Alan pressed a sequence of controls. Probes away, Captain, moving into predetermined pattern alpha. On the view screen, 6 small objects detached from the Pathfinder and began moving in a precise formation, heading toward different sectors of space. To the alien sensors, they would appear as small scout vessels conducting reconnaissance. Greg, start broadcasting the coded fleet communications, Miller said. Greg nodded, his fingers moving across his console. Broadcasting now, sir. Mixing in some standard human military protocols with the falsified communications. Incoming transmission from the Kravor command ship, Greg announced moments later. On screen, Miller ordered, straightening in his chair. Supreme General Zextal appeared, his reptilian features set in a hard expression. Captain Miller, explain the movement of your vessel toward our fleet. This could be interpreted as a hostile action. Miller maintained his calm demeanor. Not at all, Supreme General. We're simply adjusting our position to improve our communication capabilities. The nebula creates some interference with our long-range transmissions. The alien commander's eyes narrowed. And the small vessels you have deployed? Standard procedure, Miller replied smoothly. When in an unknown situation, we gather as much data as possible. Your actions suggest preparation for conflict, not diplomatic discussions, Zextal accused. Miller allowed himself a small smile. Supreme General, if we were preparing for conflict, you would know it. I assure you, these are merely precautionary measures. After all, your fleet has us significantly outnumbered. As he spoke, Olivia subtly signaled to Miller from her station. According to her readings, the nebula was now emitting the false signatures they had engineered right on schedule. The alien commander seemed distracted for a moment, looking at something off-screen. When he returned his attention to Miller, there was a new tension in his posture. Our sensors are detecting unusual activity within the nearby nebula, Zextal said carefully. Would you have any knowledge of this? Miller kept his expression neutral. The nebula does contain some unusual properties. That's one reason we were in this sector, to study such phenomena. Before Zextal could respond, an alarm sounded on the alien bridge. The commander turned away, engaging in a heated discussion with one of his officers. When he faced Miller again, his expression had changed to one of carefully controlled concern. Captain Miller, I must insist on honesty between us. Our intelligence suggests that humans typically do not send valuable research vessels into potentially dangerous regions without protection. Miller raised an eyebrow. Your intelligence about humans seems quite detailed, Supreme General. But you're right. We rarely operate completely alone. It wasn't technically a lie. Earth scout ships usually operated in pairs or small groups, though in this case the Pathfinder had been sent alone due to resource constraints. Then you admit there are other human vessels in this sector? Zextal demanded. Miller smiled diplomatically. Supreme General, I'm not at liberty to discuss the full details of our mission parameters or the disposition of Earth's fleet. I'm sure you understand. Operational security is important to both our peoples. The alien commander's scales seemed to darken slightly. A sign of anger, Miller guessed. This conversation is not over, Captain Miller. We will speak again soon. The transmission ended abruptly. Miller turned to his crew. Status report? They've increased scanning of the nebula, Olivia confirmed. Our false signatures are being detected. Several of their smaller vessels are repositioning to form a defensive screen between us and their command ships, Lisa added. Greg looked up from his console with a surprised expression. Sir, I'm intercepting their internal communications. They're calling for reinforcements. Miller couldn't help but laugh. They're calling for reinforcements against one scout ship? Not just us, Greg clarified. They believe we're the visible part of a larger human presence. They're reporting that we're stalling while our fleet moves into position. The crew exchanged glances of disbelief and growing hope. Keep pushing, Miller ordered. Launch the second set of probes. Greg, increase the frequency of our fake fleet communications. Let's see just how far this bluff will take us. As his crew carried out his orders, Miller allowed himself a moment of pride. They were 6 humans in a small scout ship facing an alien armada, yet they had managed to create doubt and confusion among their would-be conquerors. The bluff was working. Now they just needed to maintain it long enough for Earth Command to respond to their distress signal. The standoff had lasted for 36 hours. On the bridge of the Pathfinder, fatigue was beginning to show on the faces of the crew. They had been working in shifts, maintaining their elaborate deception, while Captain Miller engaged in periodic, diplomatic discussions with Supreme General Zextal, carefully revealing nothing about Earth's true military capabilities. "Status update," Miller ordered, returning to his command chair after a brief rest. His uniform was wrinkled, and dark circles had formed under his eyes, but his voice remained steady and confident. "Their fleet continues to maintain a defensive posture," Lisa reported from navigation. "They've positioned their largest vessels in the center of their formation, with smaller ships creating a protective barrier. Our modified probes are still functioning," Allen added. "The aliens continue to track them as if they were actual scout vessels." Greg looked up from his communications console. "The volume of their internal communications has increased by 30% in the last 6 hours. They seem particularly concerned about the nebula where we've been simulating fleet movements." Miller nodded, pleased with their progress. "Olivia, how are our sensor projections holding up?" "Still effective, Captain," Olivia replied. "I've been varying the patterns to make them less predictable. It should make it harder for them to determine their false readings." "And our power reserves?" Miller asked, looking to Sam. Engineer Sam Porter frowned slightly. "That's our biggest concern, sir. Maintaining the enhanced shields in all these deceptions is draining our power faster than anticipated. We have about 20 hours left before we'll need to start shutting down non-essential systems." Miller considered this information. Their reinforcements from Earth Command, if they were coming at all, were still at least 2 days away. They needed to conserve power while maintaining their bluff. "All right, we'll—" An alarm suddenly blared from Allen's security station, cutting Miller off mid-sentence. "Captain, 3 alien vessels breaking formation," Allen reported urgently. "They're on an intercept course, high-speed approach." The main view screen showed 3 sleek alien warships moving rapidly toward the Pathfinder, weapon ports glowing with energy. "Evasive maneuvers," Miller ordered. Lisa's hands flew over her controls, and the Pathfinder banked sharply, accelerating, away from the approaching vessels. "They're pursuing," Allen warned. "Weapons locked on us." Greg's fingers moved rapidly across his console. "Captain, I'm intercepting communications from those ships. They're not following orders from their command. It appears to be a rogue action led by someone named Vexnar." "Vexnar?" Miller asked. "From what I can gather, he's a younger commander who doesn't believe our bluff. He's trying to force the issue by attacking us directly." Miller's mind raced through their options. Running would only confirm the aliens' suspicions that they were weaker than they appeared. Standing and fighting was suicide against 3 warships. But there might be a third option. "Lisa, bring us around. Head straight. For them," Miller ordered. The entire bridge crew turned to look at him in shock. "Sir?" Lisa questioned. "Do it," Miller confirmed. "Sam, route all available power to forward shields. Olivia, I need detailed targeting data on those ships' heat vents. Allen, prepare to deploy all defensive measures on my mark." As his crew scrambled to comply, Miller opened a channel. "Greg, broadcast on all frequencies. I want to speak to this Commander Vexnar." The Pathfinder turned sharply, accelerating directly toward the 3 approaching alien vessels. It was a move so unexpected that the alien ships actually slowed momentarily, as if confused by the smaller human vessel's apparent suicide run. "Channel open, sir," Greg announced. "This is Captain Frank Miller of the Earth vessel Pathfinder," Miller said, his voice hard and authoritative. "Cravor vessels, you are engaging in unauthorized hostile action. Stand down immediately or face the consequences." A harsh, younger voice responded almost immediately. "This is Commander Vexnar of the Cravor Collective. Your deceptions end, now human. You are one small vessel, alone and outmatched. Surrender immediately." Miller smiled coldly. "You seem very confident, Commander. Perhaps too confident." "We are within weapons range," Allen reported quietly. "Hold fire unless fired." "Upon," Miller ordered. Then, to Vexnar. "Commander, I strongly suggest you reconsider your actions. Supreme General Zextal has agreed to diplomatic discussions. Why are you so eager for conflict?" "Because I see through your human tricks," Vexnar snarled. "You pretend strength when you have none. They're powering weapons," Allen interrupted. Evasive pattern Omega, Miller ordered calmly. Defensive drones, deploy. The Pathfinder suddenly veered sharply as a dozen small drones launched from its hull, creating a confusing pattern of targets for the alien weapons. Energy beams from the lead alien vessel lanced through space, missing the agile scout ship by meters. The other two ships spread out, trying to flank the human vessel. Return fire, Miller commanded. Targeted strikes only. Alan, use Olivia's data on their heat vents. Alan's fingers danced across his tactical console. The Pathfinders, modest weapons designed primarily for defense rather than offense, fired with surgical precision. Instead of targeting the alien vessel's main hulls or weapon systems, the human ship aimed for the previously identified heat dispersion vents. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The lead alien ship suddenly vented plasma from its damaged cooling system, its weapons powering down as emergency protocols engaged to prevent a catastrophic overload. Direct hit on target 1, Alan reported, surprise evident in his voice. Their weapons are offline. Target the second vessel, Miller ordered. Same approach. Before they could fire again, the main view screen changed to show Supreme General Zextal's furious face. Captain Miller, what is the meaning of this? The alien commander demanded. Your Commander Vexnar attacked us without provocation, Supreme General, Miller replied calmly. We defended ourselves with minimal force. As you can see, we disabled his weapons without destroying his vessel. The alien general's eyes narrowed. You disabled one of our warships with a single shot? Miller shrugged slightly. Precision targeting, Supreme General. We prefer not to cause unnecessary destruction. The truth was that they had been incredibly lucky. Olivia's analysis had been spot on, and Alan's targeting perfect. Against a prepared opponent, such a tactic would likely only work once. But the aliens didn't need to know that. Zextal turned away, barking orders to someone off-screen. When he faced Miller again, his expression was carefully controlled. Commander Vexnar acted without authorization. His vessels are being recalled immediately. Miller nodded graciously. We appreciate your intervention, Supreme General. We have no desire for conflict. After the transmission ended, the bridge of the Pathfinder erupted in restrained celebration. Lisa laughed in disbelief. Olivia and Greg high-fived each other, and even the normally stoic Alan allowed himself a small smile. That was incredible. Sir, Sam said, shaking his head in amazement. The look on their faces when we disabled that ship. Miller raised a hand for quiet. Don't celebrate yet. We bought ourselves more time, but we've also shown our hand. They now know we have the capability to target their weaknesses effectively. But that works in our favor, doesn't it? Olivia asked. They'll be even more cautious now. Possibly, Miller agreed, but we've also made them more dangerous. Zextal will adapt their defenses based on what just happened. Sir, Greg called from his station, I'm picking up increased communications across their fleet. They're discussing what just happened, and they're reaching a surprising conclusion. What conclusion? Miller asked. Greg looked up, his expression a mixture of disbelief and amusement. They think we were holding back. The precision of our attack has convinced some of their commanders that we could have destroyed the ship if we wanted to, but chose not to as some sort of, demonstration of superior firepower. A moment of stunned silence fell over the bridge before Sam burst out laughing. They think we were showing mercy? That's exactly what they think, Greg confirmed. The debate now seems to be about whether we're incredibly powerful or incredibly arrogant. Why not both? Lisa suggested with a grin. Miller allowed himself a small smile. Let them think what they want. Our job is to keep this bluff going until help arrives. He turned to Sam. How did that engagement affect our power reserves? Sam's smile faded. Not good, Captain. The drone deployment and weapons fire, combined with our enhanced shields, has accelerated the power drain. We're down to about 14 hours before critical systems begin to fail. Then we need to conserve what we have, Miller decided. Shut down all non-essential systems, reduce life support to minimal levels on unoccupied decks. And Sam, I need you to find a way to extend our power reserves. I might have an idea. the engineer said thoughtfully. It's risky, but if we modify our fusion reactor to create a controlled energy pulse, we could temporarily disrupt the nearest alien vessel's sensors. That would give us a window to deploy more sophisticated holographic projections without them detecting the energy surge. How long would their sensors be disrupted? Miller asked. Maybe 30 seconds. Not long, but enough to set up a more convincing illusion. Miller nodded. Do it. Olivia, work with Sam on creating those holographic projections. I want something that will really sell this deception. As H. The bridge of the Pathfinder was dimly lit, most systems running on minimal power to conserve their dwindling energy reserves. Captain Frank Miller sat in his command chair, fighting fatigue as he entered the fourth day of their standoff with the Cravor fleet. His uniform was rumpled, his face showing the strain of their ordeal, but his eyes remained alert and determined. Power status? He asked, his voice slightly hoarse from too many hours awake. Engineer Sam Porter looked up from his console, which showed a worrying number of red indicators. Critical, Captain. We have less than 3 hours of power remaining for our essential systems. The shield modifications are drawing too much energy. Miller nodded grimly. Communications? Our emergency beacon is still transmitting. Greg Thompson reported. If Earth Command received our distress signal, they should be arriving soon. He left the "if they're coming at all" unspoken, but everyone on the bridge felt the weight of that uncertainty. The Cravor fleet is maintaining their defensive posture, Lisa Wood said from navigation. They haven't made any aggressive moves since the incident with Commander Vexnar. And our holographic projections? Miller asked. Science Officer Olivia Patel managed a tired smile. Still operational, Captain. The energy pulse worked perfectly. Their sensors were disrupted long enough for us to deploy the holograms. According to their communications, they believe they're detecting at least 12 human warships emerging from the nebula. Miller allowed himself a moment of pride in his crew's ingenuity. Sam's controlled energy pulse had worked exactly as planned, temporarily blinding the alien sensors just long enough for Olivia to deploy sophisticated holographic projections that mimicked the energy signatures of human battleships. Security. Chief Alan Martinez looked up from his tactical display. Sir, the Cravor have repositioned their fleet again. Their command ships are moving to the rear of their formation, with their combat vessels forming a protective screen. Miller nodded. Supreme General Zextal was preparing for what he believed would be a major confrontation with a human battle fleet. The irony wasn't lost on Miller. The mighty Cravor Collective, conquerors of 12 star systems, were now on the defensive against a single scout ship and a handful of holograms. Captain, Greg called suddenly, excitement in his voice. I'm detecting an energy signature at the edge of our sensor range. The pattern is consistent with Earth vessels dropping out of faster-than-light travel. The entire bridge crew turned toward him, hope dawning on their exhausted faces. Confirmed, Olivia added, checking her own readings. Multiple vessels, 20 distinct signatures. It's an Earth fleet, Captain. A cheer went up from the crew, quickly stifled as they returned to their professional demeanor. After days of deception and desperate measures, help had finally arrived. Open a channel, Miller ordered, straightening in his chair despite his fatigue. The main view screen activated, to show the bridge of a much larger vessel. In the center stood a woman with short gray hair and the insignia of an admiral on her uniform. This is Admiral Helen Bradley of the Earth battle carrier Resolute, she announced. Captain Miller, your distress signal was received. Sorry it took us so long to get here. We came as fast as we could. Miller couldn't help but smile. Your timing is excellent, Admiral. We were just about to run out of tricks. Admiral Bradley's expression was a mixture of concern and admiration. Our long-range scans show you're facing a massive alien fleet. How have you managed to hold them off for 4 days with a scout ship? With ingenuity, luck, and a lot of bluffing, Miller replied. We convinced them we were more than we appeared. Well, the bluffing ends now, Bradley said firmly. We're moving to your position. Transmit all the intelligence you've gathered on these aliens. Already sending, Admiral, Greg confirmed. Miller turned to Olivia. What's the Kravor's reaction to our reinforcements? Olivia checked her readings. They've detected the new arrivals, Captain. Their fleet is, they appear to be adjusting their formation to face the incoming Earth vessels. Her expression showed surprise. They seem relieved? Relieved? Miller echoed in confusion. Based on their communication patterns, Greg added. They expected something much larger. They're actually encouraged by the relatively small size of our fleet. 20 ships was a substantial force by human standards. Nearly a quarter of Earth's interstellar combat fleet had been dispatched in response to the Pathfinder's distress call. But compared to the hundreds of vessels in the Kravor Armada, it was indeed a modest response force. They think this is all we have, Miller realized. After days of building up the illusion of a massive human presence, they're expecting something much bigger. Sir, Alan interrupted. The Kravor are moving into attack formation. They're targeting the Earth fleet. Miller's mind raced. The arrival of actual human warships had given the Kravor a concrete target after days of chasing shadows and holograms. If Supreme General Zextal believed this small fleet represented the full extent of humanity's military capability, he might decide to eliminate the threat once and for all. Open a channel to Supreme General Zextal, Miller ordered urgently. The alien commander's face appeared on the view screen, his reptilian features set in a grim expression of determination. Captain Miller, he said coldly, I see your reinforcements have arrived. A pitiful showing for a species that presented itself as so powerful. Supreme General, Miller replied calmly, what you see is merely our rapid response force. I strongly advise against hostile action. Zextal made a sound that might have been laughter. Your deceptions end here, human. For days you have created illusions of strength, but now we see the truth. Your species is weak, your military power insignificant. The transmission cut off abruptly. Admiral Bradley is hailing us, Greg reported. On screen, Miller ordered. Captain, Miller, the Admiral said without preamble, we're receiving weapons lock from multiple alien vessels. Intelligence from your data transmission indicates these Kravor have never actually faced a serious military challenge. Their conquest came through intimidation rather than combat. Miller nodded. They've built their empire on fear, not actual fighting skill. A grim smile appeared on Admiral Bradley's face. Then it's time they learned what real combat looks like. We've studied the weaknesses your science officer identified. All ships have been briefed, and weapons are targeted accordingly. As Miller watched, the Earth fleet began moving into a combat formation that would have been familiar to naval commanders throughout human history, a wedge designed to split the enemy's line. The Kravor fleet, despite its impressive size, responded with a rigid textbook deployment that suggested limited actual combat experience. They had the numbers, but the human vessels moved with the coordinated precision that came from centuries of warfare. The first exchange of fire was brief, but devastating. The Earth vessels, following Olivia's intelligence, targeted the Kravor, ships' vulnerable heat dispersion systems with precision strikes. 5 alien vessels were disabled in the first volley, their weapons and propulsion systems failing as their cooling systems overloaded. The Kravor response was powerful but inefficient, their energy weapons dispersed too widely to penetrate the focused shields of the Earth warships. When 3 more of their largest vessels suddenly lost power after targeted strikes, confusion spread through their formation. They're breaking formation, Alan reported, watching the tactical display with growing excitement. Their coordination is collapsing. On the main view screen, Admiral Bradley was issuing orders to her fleet, directing them to exploit the gaps in the alien formation. The Earth ships moved with practiced efficiency, disabling rather than destroying their targets whenever possible. After 15 minutes of one-sided combat, a transmission came through from the Kravor command ship. Supreme General Zextal appeared once more, but his demeanor had changed completely. Gone was the arrogance and confidence. His scales had paled to a lighter shade, and his posture showed clear distress. Admiral Bradley, he said, addressing the human fleet commander directly, I wish to discuss terms for a cessation of hostilities. You mean surrender, Supreme General? Bradley replied evenly. The alien commander's eyes narrowed, slightly. A mutual disengagement would be. Unconditional surrender is the only acceptable outcome, Bradley interrupted. Your fleet has invaded human space and threatened our personnel. We will accept nothing less than complete submission. There was a long pause as Zextal appeared to consult with others off-screen. When he returned his gaze to the camera, his defeat was evident. Very well, he said quietly. The Kravor Collective surrenders to Earth forces. As the details of the surrender were arranged, Captain Miller leaned back in his chair, relief washing over him. His crew exchanged glances of disbelief and growing. Joy, I can't believe it, Sam whispered. We actually won. No, Miller corrected with a tired smile. We survived long enough for the real fight to begin. Hours later, as Miller and his exhausted crew were welcomed aboard the Resolute, Admiral Bradley pulled him aside. Do you realize what you've accomplished, Captain? She asked. The Kravor surrendered their entire fleet because they believed we were vastly more powerful than we actually are. Those 20 ships represent nearly a quarter of our combat-ready vessels.